to A Well-Designed Business. My name is Luann Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. Before we get into today's program, I want to share something with you. As you know, the landscape of this industry has had some pretty major changes over the last 3, 4, 5 years. And those changes impact every facet of our businesses, from operations to marketing, sales, hiring, and everything in between. This isn't a big surprise, I know, but that doesn't mean it can't leave you feeling stuck and unsure about how you need to evolve in order to move forward. So I'm inviting you to talk about it. Join me for How the Industry Has Changed: Actionable Tips to Adapt, Grow, and Profit, a free webinar that is happening today. If you're listening to this in real time, Tuesday, November 28th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Okay, I'll be joined by the instructors of Louisiana University, and you'll walk away with action items so that you can start planning for a profitable and successful 2024. Go to luannigara.com/live-event. That link will obviously also be in the notes. Now, if you know me, then you know how much I love a good project autopsy. Okay. This is something I do with my team at Louisiana Nigara Inc. We do it at WindowWorks every time we complete a project. And I'm a firm believer that this is something that every single business owner should do. Whether you are a photographer, a web developer, an architect, a blogger, it is essential for each and every business owner to review their projects for profitability, efficiency, processes, and client satisfaction. Today, I am joined by someone who has found these autopsies to not only help improve his overall business, but also it ended up helping the relationship with his team members and amongst the team members. Eddie Maestri started designing homes in Dallas in 2004 and officially founded Maestri Studio in 2008. Certified by the National Council of Architectural Registration Boards, he is a registered architect in Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Nevada. Eddie delivers custom architecture and interiors tailored to his client's style and needs. Each project is influenced by the grand yet approachable architecture of his hometown, the clean lines and patterns of mid-century design, and his exposure to faraway places through his love of travel. In 2008, during one of the greatest housing crises of our industry, he officially formed Maestri Studio, but learned that good design and a personal approach to his clients is always a recipe for success, no matter what's going on in the world. When I read Eddie's intake form, I was very excited to know that this was the topic that he wanted to share with us, especially because I'll always want to know how someone has built their process and how it impacted their business. So let's get right into it and welcome Eddie to the show. Hey, Eddie, thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Thanks for having me.
So here's the thing. You did not use the word autopsy, but essentially you in your intake form mentioned what I call an autopsy. The thing is, Eddie, I always encourage everybody, interior designers, window treatment professionals, to autopsy every project for profitability, for our mistakes, for all the things. And in your intake form, you described how you went through a deep dive analyzation of the data in your business, also the humans in your business on trying to figure out what was working and what wasn't working in your business. And to me, that equates to like the autopsy of all autopsies.
Sure.
So tell me about this, and when did you do it and what spurred it? And then we'll get into the how you did it.
Sure. So we took this on about a year ago. It was right around Thanksgiving, actually. And what we were hoping to achieve is to really get a good understanding of what's working, what isn't working, what do we want to do better, and where do we want to go? Like, where do we want to see
Mm.
ourselves in the next calendar year? So we analyzed every single project that we had worked on in about a 2-year period, because that's typically how long they're with us. We do, everything from architecture all the way through, landscape architecture and furnishings. So a client will be with us for
Wow.
about 2 years. So we really wanted to find out, what is working, what's not. We took data from timesheets. We took data from, our QuickBooks, like, for profitability on different jobs. But the biggest thing for us really was we wanted to understand what each employee and designer was really kind of feeling on these jobs and what was bogging us down as a team, and which
Mm.
type of jobs were really, creating that sense of fulfillment and happiness, and which jobs weren't, um, so that we all like what we do. And at the end of the day, the goal is to, hey, be really proud of this beautiful design, but to really enjoy the process and like coming to
Mm.
work. um, so we really just took every single job. We wrote down, our top 10 clients, our top 10 projects, and started to really try to connect the dots. Like, what do they have in common? Like, what are we really wanting to go for? And then at the same time, much like we do with our website, for example, which you just mentioned a few minutes ago, we like to edit that down. So what do we want to be known for? What jobs are we seeking that kind of keep that vision as a team, that cohesive vision going? So that was the main purpose.
Interesting. And so I literally, as you just said, 3 minutes of conversation, I think I wrote 5 questions and they're like all over the place. So the first thing I think I'm going to go back to the beginning
Okay.
in that I'm assuming you have this idea as the owner of the firm that you're just like, okay, like what's working, what's not working, where do we want to go? I love that. That's your initial thoughts on it. Then thinking about doing it with the team, and you have a fairly large team, 6, 7 people or so on the team. Was it immediately great idea, Eddie? Like, let's do this, or was it like, why? Like, what? Like, because I'm thinking, of course, I want to get into the weeds, but sometimes the first step is explaining to all the eyeballs that we're going to do this, and sometimes we have eyeballs that are like, and other eyeballs that are like, yay, I love this stuff. So,
I think it was definitely a mixture of responses. I mean, I have some people
see,
who've been with me for a very long time, and I, have some people that haven't. And, you know, I wanted to kind of stress the importance of, like, hey, I know we're all busy, we're all trying to hit deadlines, but this is very important. If we don't
yeah,
set
see,
time, it's never going to happen.
yeah.
And I think that for me, closing out the year was a big one for me. I really wanted to hit the ground running in 23
Mm.
with a cohesive vision, because what I've realized over the years is that while I may have this great plan, if I can't get everybody on board, it's just not going to work. Or
Right.
somebody is going to feel left out, or somebody is going to have some type of animosity, or just feel like it doesn't work. So I really wanted to hear from everyone on, what is working, what isn't. And a big part of that was they needed to be very candid and say, well, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses, this is what I need help with, which I think some people have a hard time doing. And at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, maybe a little bit uncomfortable. Well, what are my shortfalls?
Yeah.
Like, what am I doing wrong that am I helping you get to that goal?
Yeah.
So it was a lot of conversations and some very tough ones. And I think, it was a little trying at times. Um, but I think at the end, I think we were able to really identify kind of our hero jobs, the ones that we're so proud of, the ones that really we feel good about. and that I wanted everyone to be on the same page and say, well, hey, this is what we want to do. This is what, as a team, this is what we want to strive for, and to ideally the things we want to avoid. And the reality is that not every job is going to ever work out the same way. I mean,
Right.
there's always a curveball, but when we get a project that is a curveball, kind of looking at that and saying, okay, well, what did go wrong? What is kind of awry? Like, how can we recorrect the course? And just knowing that, like, hey, this is what worked on our great projects and our jobs that we feel good about. How can we get it back there?
So the reason why I had a suspicion that it wasn't just like everybody was like, yay, is because I've been in this seat before. Right. And you do typically get that mixed reaction. And then I love the way you describe that it's not necessarily an easy process, especially if everybody is coming to it with honesty and vulnerability, because it takes a minute there for people not to just give the company line and the company answer, right? And
Sure.
to really start to say, okay, I feel safe here. I feel safe saying that this kind of project, makes my head spin. I don't like working on it. I feel like that's your favorite type, Eddie, but like I can't stand it, right? Because it's not that easy to do. And the question I have is did you structure it over multiple days? Like just the conversation now. I'm going to get into what data you gathered and all of that. But did you structure it over multiple days in a single week? Did you do once a week for a month? Did you do off-site? Did you just clear the decks and turn the phone off? How did you actually accomplish this?
So I felt that it was the most important thing for me to have a plan before I went to the team, just so that I
Good
could
for
keep
you.
that course, direction. So I spent probably 3 months on my own,
Good for
of
you.
just
Wow.
putting thoughts on paper, looking through my notes over the past year, and then just really having a plan of when I wanted to start this process with the team, and to really make that first step. The overall process with my team, I would say we met at first maybe twice in a week, and then we went to once a week, and it went on for about, I would say November and December.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because you are running a big firm, so it's not like you could just say we're all going to take a weekend off and talk and look in our belly
Right.
buttons
And,
here.
of course, everybody had deadlines, and, we're usually working it in around lunch hour. But really trying to get an understanding on, at the same time, what are the areas of these projects that are bogging us down. And in some cases, it might be that the person working on that particular task, it isn't really their strength.
Yeah.
And those were kind of hard conversations as well. It's not saying, well, hey, you're not good at this. It's just, well, this is not your complete forte. Let's put you on something that you're going to really, do really well on, so that we can also speed up our process in some ways, and streamline things so that we are more profitable, which, of course, is the ultimate goal, is really just to, to run a business and to make sure that we can earn those profits to sustain our employees and to keep them
Yeah.
on long term.
That is probably, I think, one of the most difficult things that I have encountered over my years and all the employees that have come and gone through the various companies is it's one thing, and it's hard enough because everybody's a human and they've all spent whatever period of time in your world and you appreciate them for that. But when somebody's just not right, and they're not right on multiple levels, not right culture fit, not right skill set, all the things, letting somebody go isn't the easiest, but like it's like, I don't know, when you do it once or twice, when it's better, you just get easy and easy better doing it. But somebody that you want to keep and that has value, but they maybe are not seeing their gaps and it is affecting others. That is, I have found over the years, one of the most difficult things
100%.
to overcome,
Yes,
right?
for sure. And because everybody has some type of gap, honestly. I mean, I know I
Yeah.
do. And,
Yep. All of us.
and the hard thing too is when I started my business, it was just me, and I did everything. And then, as we're growing the team, I'm adding on people to help me fill the gaps that I know that I need help with. But then over the course of, 15 years, and people come and go, and it might not always be that every gap is fulfilled. So, and of course, everybody changes over time. And,
Yeah.
our business has changed dramatically. I mean, the projects that we take on have changed. So I think that, this whole process that we undertook is not something that we're just going to do once, even. I mean, I think this is something that we need
Yes.
to
Oh
do
no. Yeah.
ongoing, on an
Yes.
ongoing, probably once a year, ideally. I mean, we haven't gotten to it yet, but definitely to understand, like, hey, like, this is what we started. Is it working? Or do we need to course correct again? Do
Right.
we realize that?
And it should get easier each time because now we all have the muscle of being vulnerable. You've
Sure,
collected the data, so you're updating it, right? But
exactly,
and I would encourage you, to go and put it on the calendar maybe for Q1 because you're right, you did so much good hard work on it, right?
exactly.
Yeah. But it's funny on a very simplistic level, like literally simplistic level, and you don't even have the role of this in your business. But, I just did like 3 window treatment for podcast interviews before I got here. So like window treatments are on my brain. But it's like when I think about like, if you're a window treatment retailer and you're only doing hard treatments and your installer is amazing. And then all of a sudden, as the owner, you decide to add soft treatments and this installer has this identity of being a super employee. This installer has this identity to be a super good at what he or she does. And then all of a sudden you add the complexity of soft treatments and you're looking around going, you're not good at soft treatments. And it's so hard because you still need them for this. But if they see themselves as that, that is and that's a very simplistic because your design firm, your architecture firm, the nuances are so much greater. But I'm just relating to our colleagues listening. How can you have an employee that was a star employee and that now isn't and is the one possibly causing the bottlenecks, but you don't want them to go and they don't see that they're the bottleneck. Like that is, ugh. I don't wish that on anybody.
Right. And I think what we started on, start doing is just getting feedback from everybody else too, one on one, that where
Yes.
they feel more comfortable to kind of have that kind of candid conversation,
Yes.
and to really just kind of test the waters. I mean, and I think one of the things though that was really frustrating for a lot of people was I kind of, you know, just threw the ducks in the pond in a way and said, hey, like, sink or swim. Let's see what the strengths and weaknesses are. And it definitely stirred things up. I mean, there were people very upset, but it was really important for me because I needed to understand, you know, for example, like, is this person who wants to be project manager, are they ready? Can they handle this?
Right.
And
Right.
in some cases, I was pleasantly surprised. And then in some cases I was like, hey, not quite ready for this role. Um, and that was really important because ultimately I want them to be ready. I want them to be successful and, to stay in the role that they're in and make that role really work. Um, so explaining that and was difficult. But I think over the course of going through those difficult conversations and, very frustrating times, I think, ultimately, I think the past year has run so much more smoothly. And I think, for the most part, the team seems to be a lot happier. And I will come in sometimes and I'm like, wow, the whole energy is different. I think everybody's kind of,
Ah.
you know, doing a lot better, so, um, because again, I want my team to stay, and the ultimate goal, I want
Yes.
them to like their job. And I think
Yes.
when we're working on elements of a job that we do not like, it just kind of starts to bog you down and you don't feel like you're in the right fit.
Well, and I love that observation too, because if you have more than a few people on your team as you do, what if it's just a simple rejiggering of everything? If everybody's laying out, these are the favorite kinds of projects. These are my favorite aspects of each of these projects. And literally you have two people. It's like, again, it's like you got a quarterback and you got like a running back, and the running back is wishing he's a quarterback, and a quarterback is sick and tired of being the quarterback, and nobody knows until you have these deep autopsies. And what if it is just as simple as change seats? You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying?
And honestly, we had that. We had somebody that was realizing, like, hey, this is not what I really want to do. And
And thought that they had to do it, or because
right.
that was their
And
role,
they,
and they would let you down or the team down,
right.
right?
And I think, that switch up was really so helpful in a lot of ways because it really made me take a hard look at that role and what we wanted that role to be, and ultimately how that role ties into who we want to be. Um, so it allowed me to kind of, restructure. So I think one of the things that I've learned over, the years is that, a lot of these curveballs that were thrown, it's actually a really good opportunity to take another really difficult, hard look at what's going on, and is it really what we want? Is it what I
Yeah.
want?
Yeah. Yeah. So the personnel was one aspect of this, of really everybody airing what are their favorite projects, their favorite parts of the projects, and that
Right.
reveals the strengths and the weaknesses, and also hard conversations directly having conversations about you, each of you recognizing this is where a project always starts to go sour, and then maybe discovering it's because there's X amount of process not enunciated, or the person isn't following. The other things that you said that you did was you did a profit analysis and of the jobs that were profitable versus the ones that maybe were less profitable. And I'm curious, since your company, Eddie, does the landscape architecture, the actual, building architecture to the furnishings, did you find that, did you even break it down and like, you know what, on landscape we make like the best money, like we should be doing more of that, or we make the least money on furnishings, and so if we don't get that, we don't care? Like, did you learn anything about that, or did you just learn to make each of those better profit centers?
Um, so I did learn a lot about each section of the business in that regard, and I'll tell you, I was actually very surprised because what I had thought the whole time wasn't necessarily accurate.
It
Um,
almost
I
never is. Can
really
I just tell you?
I really
It's
had to see
almost
it on
never is.
paper, and also realizing that some of the jobs that might have been our biggest fee were actually potentially our least profitable project, or our biggest house, for example, that we were doing at the time was a complete profit suck. I mean, it was just taking all of our money, and we were paying, literally paying, to work on this project. So
Whoa,
for us,
that's
in that
painful.
sense, I think what, to kind of go back to what you said about, did I look at each one and try to build that one up? 100%. So we looked at each sector of the business and said, okay, well, how can we make each one run much more smoothly, be more profitable, and be more enjoyable? And what we had decided to do is go in there and create some processes throughout the design and the drawings and the entire experience that we use as kind of a checkpoint, um, to say, hey, this is what's working, this is what's not working, or at least to alert us to know, like, hey, this is one of those potential projects that's really gonna, you know look great on paper, but it's really just taking a lot more time and money, because time is money.
Yes, yes. It's funny because in Exciting Windows, we have a member, Oliver, who runs a very large business. It's a $15 million plus gross revenue business. And he has a saying that numbers are for vanity and profits are for sanity.
I
So
like
it's like,
that.
yeah, right. And it's like, it reminds me of, there's this big, glorious interior design project or architecture, and we think this is the one. And when you really, and this is why I've always, since day one of the podcast, encouraged all of the designers and window treatment professionals to do the actual autopsy of every project, because if you just go along, you don't learn like what you need to learn. And I
Definitely.
love that you learn surprising things about each of these revenue streams, or parts of the revenue streams of your projects, right?
Right. And there was, things that I thought I had a great handle on, but didn't fully understand until we did that autopsy and
Yeah.
understood, like, hey, what is really not working here?
Yeah. No, what's funny is I'm no different. I'm the same. I'm the same way. We think something's a certain way. The only thing I've learned is that until we do the data on it, yeah, that's my feeling on it. But let's confirm it. And I have had it borne out over and over again in the last 4 years that I've been doing chairman of the board coaching, and I don't think I've ever asked a chairman of the board client to analyze a particular area of data on their projects that they were accurate about what they actually found. Like they were like, oh no, I'm going to find blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, that's great. Just prove it to both of us. And
Yeah.
then they're always come back and they're like, oh my God, I had no idea. And I think it's just human nature. The things that we enjoy doing, we imagine that we have more benefit from them in doing them, but we don't always. Right?
And I think, part of it too was learning when to say no,
Yes,
and
right?
really kind of drawing some lines in the sand, and with the client and with request, and realizing that we were really wanting to people please so much that we were kind of not exactly even following our own contract. We're doing more than we should have. So that was something that was very eye opening as well. Um, but the biggest thing with that was understanding what types of clients as well are coming to us for those different services, and how to best serve them, because ultimately it's a service industry. um, so that was another thing that came out of it, and I think for the most part, I think it's been going pretty well for this year.
So I love this little revelation in here that you learning to say no, and learning that you were maybe sometimes too interested in people pleasing, that you weren't even following the boundaries created by your own contract. So the thing about that is that is where the tough line and the analytical line has to be established between an exceptional customer service policy,
Right.
right? And like policy,
Right.
like we just don't run over me, like I'll run with you all the way to the race and through the finish line, but like you're not dragging me under the wheels, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So when you said learning to say no, it sounded like in the project, in the middle of it, as opposed to just, which is another point of saying no to the wrong projects, which I'm sure you also discovered. But it sounded like the tougher lesson was during it, when you're already in bed with the client.
I would say it was both. I think that we
Both.
were taking on projects that were probably not the right fit for us because, we liked the client, or it was a friend of a friend, or some reason. Um, but I think the biggest thing is during the course of a project, and I'm sure so many designers have faced this in the past couple of years, construction costs are surging. And,
Mm.
we were finding that we're doing a lot of work. Because we could go from concept to through bidding, and then to starting construction, and the costs keep going up. So we'll get a request, and so it'll say, hey, we need to revise this based on value engineering, and we were just doing it. And it was just killing us. I mean, the
Oh,
amount of time that was spent on that, we're redoing work essentially for free. um, so yeah, I would say it was from the very beginning, and then also during the middle of a project, because we want the client to be happy, and we want them to see
yeah.
their job into fruition. But understanding when we have to kind of lay out, like, hey, this is actually, an ad service, um, or simply we don't do that kind of work, and saying
Right,
and saying
right.
no.
So going into that nuance there. So like you do a design plan, whether it's for the architecture, landscape, whatever it is, you do a design plan. And now whatever happens by the time you're getting construction costs or whatever, what you're explaining, and I'm just confirming that I understood,
Sure.
is that by the time it gets there, maybe let's just use a silly number, it was 100K for this thing, and now the construction team is saying this is going to be 175K, and the client saying, hey, go back and redo the design so you can get it closer to 100K, and you're now having to maybe look at how many hi-hats you put in the damn place. Like, I don't know what
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
things that you would do,
Yeah.
right? And so what you're saying is recognizing that you were there was a moment, and there was an X amount of projects where you just did it without thinking about, are we really obligated to do this, and why are we doing it? And then and in this analyzation, you're like, geez, we ate a lot of hours up and ate our whole profit on doing this, right?
Definitely, because I think part of it, and the difficult thing to convey to a client, is that ultimately a lot of these decisions are the clients. and that, hey,
So it wasn't necessarily construction costs always being the
right. Well,
culprit.
or
It's
just
like, I
not
just
quite
changing my
understanding
mind or
and listening to, hey, we see cost climbing, and then not leaving it to contingency, for example.
uh,
Um, so yeah, I think the biggest thing that came out of this whole process was really, you know, educating the client, for one, on what we do and what we don't do, and really setting up an internal process on how we deliver design and drawings, and clients will sign off on that and then understand it, and then just how we really have tackled all of the phases in design as periodic sign-offs to make sure that we are completing what we're supposed to be completing at the time, and it's helped us keep track of what's going on.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes sense, right? It's like, it's just like what we were saying. Like, literally, every one of us will think we recall the details of something until we're asked to actually pull the details up. And we're
100%.
like,
Yeah.
oh, that's crazy. So we're expecting a client to be able to keep track of a multiple, 6 or 7 figure project without check-ins
Yeah.
timely enough for them to be recalibrated to, hey, another 500,000's coming, another this is coming, right?
And it's a daunting task, I mean, for a client to take on jobs this
Yeah.
large. So
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to keep them educated along the way, and that's what that's our goal.
Yeah. You know what it reminds me of? And also, I always use the silliest analogies, but it's kind of like, you're going into a grocery store and or a clothing store, and there's no prices on anything. You're just like, oh, that looks good, I'll have one of those. And then you get to the register and you're like, oh, I don't have $12,000 for all these clothes. I didn't realize that one pair of shoes was $1,000, right?
Yeah.
Whereas when you're like turning the shoe over, you're like, yep, I'm not the $1,000 shoe girl, put that one back. You're making calibrated decisions all the way through. And I think that's what I'm hearing. You now put process in place that your team is requiring your clients to show up with their eyeballs and their brain engaged and say, yep, so far I'm on board with all this, right? Is that what you're
Yeah,
doing now?
exactly. And
Yeah.
really, also to have every one of the clients, spouses, whoever's involved, to make those decisions together.
Yeah.
Because that was something that was really eye-opening as well.
Oh,
But
because one would say, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then people were showing up and saying, no, now my
yes,
partner is like not on board.
definitely. Um,
Ugh.
so, going back to the types of projects that we decided to take on, we started to realize that there were direct correlations to certain jobs and certain types of projects that we were seeing that more. And how
Oh.
can we avoid that? And
So what were the markers, Eddie? Like you're saying, so what you just said
yeah,
there, I think I heard you say, when we actually looked at the ones that went south and had these negative situations, they had things in common.
100% had yes, definitely.
Oh my God, what were they? Do tell.
I would
Now they
say,
will be different for every firm, but
yeah,
still,
yeah.
there's going to be an enlightenment here, I'm sure.
I would say, for example, one thing was, smaller renovations, you know,
Ah,
um, or like piecemeal renovations where we're
ah,
doing maybe the primary bath and the kitchen, but not the whole house, right? And there's scope creep, and you might have people that really want more to be done, and then they get upset for some reason that the project's getting higher and higher. That's a good one. So for us, we have started to take a step back from those, and we will only do whole house renovations, and that's our goal, is to do the entire project, start to finish, and we do the entire house. um but that said, I mean, like we were saying before, that isn't always ideal, if and
somebody's got to pay the bills
right,
sometime,
and
right?
we might find that hey, a project went on hold for whatever reason, and we need to fill the gap, or maybe there is a really great design potential for a kitchen, and this is a good one, let's do it. So
So what do you do in that case, Eddie? So is it literally like, I'm the big cheese, I will make this decision? Or is it like, hey, we decided as a group that we're not going to do just a kitchen. However, like, do you come to your team now and say, hey, without opening the checkbook, we need to do this kitchen? Or do you say,
Yeah.
here are the other factors? Like, how do you do that?
So yeah, going back to what I was saying about wanting everyone's feedback, instead of just taking the project and sending over the contract immediately, I will talk to my team and I'll say, hey, this project went on hold for a few months. These are our latest contacts who want us to do some work. What do you think? And there are everybody will agree on, and then there's some that a few people have some reservations about, and I take that into account for sure, because like I was saying, I want everyone to be happy and working on their project. I don't want them to feel
Right.
like, oh, I have to do this silly project and take on all this stress because of whatever reason. So I do want it to be a good fit. And I think the biggest thing that we've been starting to do is really take a hard look at the projects when they come into the studio, and get a better understanding of, has the client worked with the designer before? Not a deal breaker, but just so that we can also know how to educate that client on what
Mm,
to expect, what the processes are. And then we actually will know better too, does that client need more handholding than another
yeah.
client would?
Well, and I think you're right. I mean, that's a valid criteria, right? It's like if you have decided as a firm you're only going to do full houses, and then here you are, as you said, like, look, you got to pay the bills, you got to keep the
Right.
business open. You don't have one employee, you have half a dozen or more, and
Payrolls every two
it's
weeks.
like, yeah, right. And it's a big nut,
Right.
right? And so if you've got to keep the doors open, I love there has to be a way for the principal to be able to come to the team and say, hey guys, this is the reality of life, right?
Right.
I remember years ago, I had a conversation with an interior designer at a live event. So it was not on the podcast because I can picture where we were sitting. And she was explaining to me that they had a big firm, like multiple design teams, like I don't remember if it was 10 or 12 or whatever, but it was like multiple design teams. And I remember the part of the conversation where the firm is so well known and blah, blah, blah. And you totally expect that this firm is only going to do whatever they are only going to do, whether it's whole house or blah, 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 or build up or whatever it is. And I loved the honesty in the moment. And I remember this CEO saying to me, that is what we put on our website. That is what we put on our Instagram. That is what we put in all of our marketing messaging. She said, but you take it to the bank with 12 design teams or whatever here. If I've got three there's three teams looking at me without projects for the next 2 months scheduled, and somebody comes in and wants to just knock out their primary bath, if they're a repeat customer or like she had her criteria. She said, but it was like, we can go in, we can knock this out in 2 months and get right back to the project that is supposed to come in that we're signed on for the thing.
Yep.
She's like, I got to pay the bills. I got to keep the doors open.
And I would
Right.
say, key part of that for me was repeat customer. And
Right.
I feel, we will always work with a repeat customer. And I think that I feel so honored when they come back and they say, hey, would you do this small project for me? And I always say, yes, we'd love to, because it's just,
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
really, it's the same project just going on and on and on, and you want to see it through.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely will make exceptions to that. And, we do primarily residential, but if we get a call for a really cool opportunity for like a boutique commercial job, like, yeah, we'll definitely consider it. We're working
Yeah.
on one right
Yeah.
now. Um, so, I mean, I think that the biggest thing is, set rules in place, and have a guideline, but always know when to break that rule. I mean, it doesn't have to be a
Mm.
steadfast, we don't do
Right.
kitchens, for example.
Well, and there's good reasons for it, right? Like, there's profitability that you're taking into it. You're taking the criteria, like I said, like this person, I remember saying a repeat customer, or sometimes it was the children
Mm,
of their
yeah.
repeat customer, right? Grown children, obviously, right? And I also love that you preface it by saying, I'm not signing the deal and walking through the front door of my team and going, here's what's in your face. Like, it reminds me of like parenting. You can be the the authoritative parent and say, it's my way, my highway. Or you can say, here's the reasons why I think you should go to bed at 8 o'clock because you're going to be a dummy at school tomorrow and you're never going to graduate. And then your whole life is going to be shot. It's like, you got to lay it out. Like, what are the reasons why and get the buy-in,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I love it. So any other, like ahas or surprises in this discovery of all this data and analysis? And, did you have anything where like maybe places where the whole team was aligned on like, this is the kind of thing of blah, blah, or the whole team was like, oh my God, I've never enjoyed that either, or that kind of project, or you had that moment where like maybe they all had a reaction. You're like, wait, I'm the only one who thinks differently about this? Like any surprises?
I think the biggest surprise, and I don't know that it was a 100% of surprise, but the biggest surprise that kind of came out was, we wanted to do bigger but less projects so that we could really hone in on the details and make them better. And at the same time, it was that we really didn't need our team to be as big. That was a big revelation. And it just so happened that, over the course of the next few months, we had a few people leave for other opportunities, and I decided not to replace. And it's been working really well. And I think by really focusing on our team's strengths and knowing what the weaknesses are, it's been running very well.
Well, what I love about that is what I heard in there is with the in-depth analysis that was undertaken by all of the team and the clarity, it sounds like you guys got real clarity on who does what and where do they fit in and what their superpowers are, and let's mitigate and train for the gaps or whatever. But like, I think what I heard in there is if 2 or 3 people leave and then over a 6-month period of any larger team, without this clarity, it's human nature for the rest of the team to be like, when are you going to hire somebody? Like, I'm dying over here. Right. Whereas if you guys, like the way you looked and said, hey, all the eyeballs left, you guys got this. We're humming and doing this. They probably had that same sense of, yeah, we don't need, like, now that I've got my lane, I'm good in my lane. And I don't care that other person is gone, right? Not as a person, but as a role.
Right. And I think for the most part, it was very scary, I think, at the very beginning, but I think for the most part, everybody has been feeling very comfortable and understanding like, hey, we're working efficiently. We're realizing that this person that, we love might not have been the best time management person. And now, we're really trying to be very efficient, and we're working on what needs to happen versus, maybe what didn't really need to be incorporated. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, and that is one of the results of an in-depth discovery like this with team members being truthful, is you find out, at least in the experience that I've had around this topic, you find also too that the person that you thought wasn't really a team player or really was kind of dead weight or whatever, I think I can remember being younger, as a younger business owner, thinking, me and Vin are the only ones that know this. But the truth is, everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. You know what I mean? And you think you're hiding it and you're overcompensating for them. But what you realize is that the other people are showing up and overcompensating for them as well. And they're a little resentful for it. And so when you say, look, we kind of realize that if this person chose to go or this person that, it's like, with the clarity of, yeah, they were dragging us down anyway. Now we're happy to fill that spot without them, right?
Not necessarily dragging us down, but just that, if our goal really is to have bigger projects and less of them,
we don't need 50
do we really need another person? And I think that was part of the telling tale was, well, now. And at the same time, understanding what is kind of our sweet spot, that our team works well together and that can be manageable, because, having to deal with more people is time consuming and it's hard to really focus. So, that was a big one for me was, I wanted to, like coming to work, so, Um, and at the same time, I have always loved, giving up some control and having employees, kind of teach me and show me
Yeah,
new things. And it's been really important for me to just really trust that, hey, they've got
that's
this.
nice. And to that point, knowing that your firm is doing architecture and landscape architecture and furnishings, where are you in the day to day on that? Like,
Right.
are you creative director, so all the people are doing the things and you're giving a once over? Are you in the weeds? Like, I know that's a lot of what, as designers build their businesses bigger, they're like, well, where do I go? I just sit at the top and watch everybody. Like, what? Not that that's easy to do.
Yeah, and I think that, in a sense, that was probably a little bit of an identity crisis for me,
Mm,
is that I enjoy the
mm,
doing, and so I am creative director, and I like to be involved, and I like to, you know, see the design, and see the entire big picture. That's really important for me, and you know, like I was saying, I have to trust my team that they can execute, but there are days that, yes, I'm drawing, and there's days that I'm running, silly errands, or, but, I would say, I'm involved in every aspect of it, but for the most part, yeah, I try to, just kind of oversee and basically, really trust them and listen to their feedback, because I have some very talented people working for
mhm.
me, and I want them to get better and to take risk and to,
I have
really
heard
show me what they're capable of.
I've heard principals in your position describe it as, I'm going to have the meetings with the client. I'm going to understand the vision for the project. I'm going to set the vision for the project with my team. And then they're going to do, and then bring it to me at a certain point. And I'm going to, edit, redline, critique, whatever. And then they're going to revise. And then I've had others say, I don't want to be that far removed from actually the selection of, the drapery or the crown moldings or the dining room table. So where do you sit in that, Eddie?
I would say somewhere in the middle. I mean, I definitely, just with day to day, there's not enough time to really be in the weeds on every
Right.
single thing. But I enjoy, design, and I enjoy, coming up with new solutions. So, I try to be involved as much as possible. But, again, I really trust my team, and I really trust that they are doing what's best for that
Do
project.
you have
Um,
incremental design meetings along the way so that you are, because I can see that. First of all, listen, we start our businesses because, like you said, when you started it, you did everything. You're good at it. Now, all of a sudden, what, you're a CPA, for crying out loud? Like, no, you're not. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're a
right. A lot
designer,
of time in QuickBooks.
right? Like, and so
Yeah.
the thing is, and I also can see the value of, no matter how talented they are, they don't have your expertise. And so, like you just said, that problem solving part of it, like, I can imagine if they keep you completely out of that, then how do you help problem solve and teach and expose them to your 20 plus years experience, right?
Well, and I don't. There's not really a one size
Yeah.
fits all.
Yeah.
So I treat every employee differently, as far as, hey, this person might not need me, or actually this person might actually do better if I step away for a few
Okay.
days, because they can get really
Mm,
creative, versus somebody else that might need a little bit more one-on-one time. And you know that's something that's really hard, I think, as a team, for to understand that, like, this person might look like they get hovered on
mm,
versus the other one, but it's just one of those things. I mean, you start to really know each other and start to really know what you're good at, and um, I trust all of them. They know
yeah.
what they're doing. They're good. Um, but I try to set up. It never works out as planned. Days get so busy, but I try to set up design reviews, and kind of, sit together. And I would say my favorite times is when we sit down as a group and we look at design
Mm,
together, and throw out
fun.
ideas. I mean, those are great. It's harder and harder to have it
Yeah.
happen, but, with schedules and everything. But
Yeah,
I enjoy
that's
it.
that's fun. Yeah, you don't want to design yourself out of the fun part of the business that you like. I mean, it's sort of like,
Right.
right? It would be like me, like, having a
And that was
podcast and
one of the
never showing
things.
up anymore. Like, what am I doing? Like,
Yeah, and that was one of the things during, the autopsy, as you call it, that I wanted to look at and see what part of the job am I
Mm.
enjoying, and am I enjoying data entry and reconciling QuickBooks? No. um, but for me, I love to draw. I love thinking up design. I love putting it on paper, and I love FaceTime with the
Mm.
client. So I was really trying to get more of that throughout the process, and then the same thing for my team. What part of it do you really
Yeah.
love?
I love that. I love that. Starting with, you know, like when I also referring to my chairman of the board clients, I'm like, wave a magic wand. Like if your day could look exactly the way you want it to look like, forget what you think is possible. Forget whether you have the team around to enable it. Forget if you have the money to do it. Like,
Sure.
what would it look like? Because if we don't start with at least what it looks like, how can we reverse engineering and engineer it to get there? Right? It's like you building
Right.
a house. Like you design the way the house is going to look so that, you have all the drawings and all the, specifications so that the GC can actually make it a real thing. But if you're just like, just make a beautiful house, he's like, all right, Eddie, whatever. And I think that's what we do with our businesses a lot. We're just like, let's just have a successful business. Well, what does it mean exactly to have a successful business? Because it doesn't mean the same as for me, as you, as somebody else. And if you don't design it, you can't get
It
there.
doesn't mean the same thing today that it did 3 to 5 years ago. So,
Exactly.
um, the needs change. I mean, my kids are getting a little older. I everything changes, right? So,
Yeah.
having to go with that, and then at the same time to look back and see what really is it like. Why did I even get into this business at all? Am I
Yes.
doing that still?
Yes.
And for me, I love, like I said, I love hand rendering, and I was like, well, I want to be doing that more. And it doesn't
Mm.
always work out, but I think if I can
Right.
make it a goal and say, hey, I'm going to do it at least so many times and on this project or day.
Way better chance of it working out if it's a stated desire and goal
Exactly.
than you just
Exactly.
keep waking up every year in January or in December and going, well, there's a whole nother year where I didn't have my hands in the design. Like,
Right.
great, this big business that I've got, right? It's just like silly.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say another point is, at the end of the project, I like to talk about, yeah, we have these beautiful photos of, houses that, look amazing. But I like to talk about, like, what could we have done better? And are there any details that we want to improve on? Or was there
Mm,
anything in this particular project or communication that went wrong? Like what could we do
yeah.
better for next time? And I think it's so important to really build on that, and to kind of keep evolving and growing, so that, not only is the client happy, but we are.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love it. I just applaud you because I have a very good idea of what you've done and how difficult it was to do. And I'm sure how much energy and patience and time it took to do. And so few business owners actually give themselves the gift of doing that. And I think it's awesome that you did
Well,
it for
thank you.
yourself. Yeah, yeah. And I would just, before I let you go, I would just say, is there any other aspect of it that I didn't ask you about or that you didn't have a chance to share that you think is important for a colleague to understand or grasp or whatever, or maybe just pep talk, a little pep words for what's ahead of them, but the result is worth it.
Yes, I would say another thing that was really helpful for me was to lean on other friends in the industry, and
Mm,
understand that, you know you look at everybody on Instagram and everything looks perfect, and then understanding that they're going through the same things that we are, and
yep.
how are they handling it, and what is their advice, and that, it's not a competition. I mean, we're all successful designers. Like, I'm not stealing their clients, and so I think that we have a little group here, that we really can talk to each other, and kind of throw some things out there. So that was very helpful. And to lean on their experience. There's things that they've dealt with that I haven't yet, and vice versa.
Yes.
And
I
what
love
can we
that.
expect?
I love that. I love that. That's music to my ears, right? Because that's what we're all about here. Let's share all the information, help each other, all be the best version of ourselves because there's no other you. That's such a cliche, but that's true. If you're perfect for a client, then someone else by default is not, because they're not you,
Definitely.
period.
Yeah.
So I love that. And you know what? We can teach each other all day long every business principle, but we still have to process it and deliver it in our way. And so therefore, even if you give somebody the exact process to do, you don't have to worry about that. That's like Jenny in Lou University. She teaches her exact process to build a design for specification book, because she knows, like, even if you're in her area in Arizona, you're going to end up doing it a tiny bit different than her. It doesn't matter,
Yes.
So I love it. I love it. Well, this has been outstanding, Eddie. I have enjoyed this conversation so much. I just think you're just so, it's just so incredible for you to be literally so vulnerable in sharing what a difficult thing, but I love that it's so clear, all the rewards that you got from doing it. So congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
You know, the timing of this conversation was perfect, because Luann Live was just about a month ago, not even at this point, and our autopsy was probably about 2 weeks ago as I'm recording this. And in that autopsy, we reviewed the entire event from top to bottom. It was 4 hours and 12 people, okay? And it was grueling, but it was worth it. Because just like Eddie believes, it's necessary to do these things, okay? And you have to set the time aside for it, because otherwise it doesn't happen, okay? And if it doesn't happen, then the lessons are lost. Right? And if the lessons are lost, well, guess what? You're doomed to repeat the mistakes. That's the simple truth. So we each have to face the failures, learn from them, make the corrections, and get better results the next time. Not easy, not fun, not a fun thing, but worth it. All right. So if you are working on some projects now and you have not set an autopsy date in the calendar, I suggest you take a look right now. Look ahead. I don't care if it's 3 months, 5 months, whatever it is. Okay. The autopsy date for Luann Live was set back last summer. Exactly, so that we could get 12 people all together at the same time that had a 4-hour block to do it. All right. So here's the other thing. Back in episode 604, I reviewed the process that WindowWorks uses for an autopsy, and that is very specifically project-based. I'm sure things have changed since then. I mean, it's 300 episodes ago, but I'm sure too that the guts there are for that would help you as a framework. Okay, all right, just so if you want to get started. And then keep in mind for Eddie, he spent 3 months privately on his own as the CEO, working on the structure of the autopsy that he envisioned, thinking about what he wanted to analyze, what he wanted to get from it, and figuring out how he would introduce this new process to his team. Okay, and you heard him say, not everyone was on board with it at first, especially because it requires us to have not so fun conversations. But now his team has come to appreciate the autopsy and see the value in it. All right. I love that he encourages his team to be able to give and take constructive criticism and to be able to keep evaluating their process, to continue to look at how they can always do things better. And also how, as a team, that they can focus on creating the path to their collective goals. All right. When he described this, part of this helped his team identify their hero jobs, right? The ones that they love doing, that they were like, oh, yeah, we all love this guy, right? And the ones that they don't like doing so much. Okay. The other result that Eddie and his team got from this autopsy was it helped them better recognize where projects go sour, because they noticed that it was happening across the board on projects at similar points. Okay, that's the whole point of this. It's like if the thing keeps happening, it's like, there it is again. Okay, so now that you identify it, now you can tweak and add new processes that weren't there before. Okay, and sometimes you find that it's because you have people sitting in the wrong seats. This happens, unfortunately, more often than we think, but it's hard to uncover it if you're not looking at it objectively with the little distance from the project, right? This reminds me of a conversation I had way back in the day with Joni Vanderslice, episode 101. Can you imagine? Okay. One of the things in this episode, it's a great episode for team management. I'm going to tell you right now, Joni at that point was running a 50-person team. But one of the things that was so eye-opening about that episode was that at first glance, it seemed like they had a problem employee. And then they discovered that the problem wasn't the employee. And I'm not going to tell you the rest, because if you haven't listened to it, you should go back and listen to it. It's a great, great conversation. Episode 101. That's a heck of a CEO, that lady right there. Okay. Now, the other thing is that it reminds me that if you are having issues with your team, with employees, then I highly suggest that you connect with Eileen Hahn and Jennifer Tukatayan. Okay. And Jennifer will be teaching at Louisiana University this year, teaching about leadership and team development. Okay. And I don't care if you have one person on your team, 5 people on your team, or 20 people on your team. There are principles for leadership that have to be learned. Okay. It's like I always use like the marathon example. I don't care if you want to run a 5K, a half marathon, or a marathon. There are some basic things about running that if you don't have set down, you're not going to be able to do any of them. If you have the wrong sneakers, you can't run a 5K, let alone a marathon, right? If you don't know how to do a stride, if you don't know how to, if you don't know the course. So this is the thing when you learn about leadership and team development. And I encourage you to go to louisianauniversity.com to look at that class that we'll be offering this year. So I've really enjoyed this insightful conversation with you, Eddie. I mean, thank you so much for really sharing this and for bringing this topic to us. I love this type of a thing because it's through difficult and challenging exercises like this that we do as business owners that really move the needle in our company and really help us start to emerge as that CEO. So thanks tons, Eddie, for joining us. I really, really enjoyed meeting you. Now, it's happening today. So if you've heard about it already, I hope you are signed up. But if you're listening in real time, we are having a free webinar today, okay? And we are going to be talking about the changes in the industry over the last 5 years and what are some action items that you can do as the owner of your business to weather them and to be prepared for them. So join me at 11 o'clock Eastern time if that time has not passed yet, okay? Go to louisianauniversity.com/live-event. The link is in the show notes. Thank you so much for showing up today. I do appreciate you. Decide to be excellent. Thank you for joining me today. This podcast is a production of Louisiana Niagara, Inc. If you want to know more about me, my books, or Louisiana University, go to louisiananiagara.com. And if you are interested in having WindowWorks help you with your next window treatment or awning project in the New York, New Jersey metro area, go to windowworksnj.com to learn more. Have an excellent day.